All of us are faced with two choices, both of which are lousy. One choice is vote against the objection. And tens of millions of Americans will see a vote against the objection as a statement that voter fraud doesn't matter, isn't real, and shouldn't be taken seriously. And a great many of us don't believe that. On the other hand, most, if not all of us, believe we should not set aside the results of an election just because our candidate may not have prevailed. And so I endeavored to look for door number 3, a third option, and for that I looked to history, to the precedent of the 1876 election, the Hayes-Tilden election, where this Congress appointed an electoral commission to examine claims of voter fraud. 5 House members, 5 senators, 5 Supreme Court justices examined the evidence and rendered a judgment. And what I would urge of this body is that we do the same, that we appoint an electoral commission to conduct a 10-day emergency audit, consider the evidence, and resolve the claims. For those on the Democratic aisle who say there is no evidence, they've been rejected, then you should rest in comfort. If that's the case, an electoral commission would reject those claims. But for those who respect the voters, simply telling the voters, go jump in a lake, the fact that you have deep concerns is of no moment to us. That jeopardizes, I believe, the legitimacy of this and subsequent elections.
We can handle the truth. And ultimately, the truth is what this is all about. Getting to it, finding out what is real, what is not. What actually happened in this election. It is essential. Our entire system rests on the premise that we believe there is a good faith and there is a fairness in the operating procedures of this republic. Senator Ted Cruz there speaking well to that point. And yet, do we feel any better about it today than we did yesterday? No, of course we feel most likely considerably worse. Why is that? Let's first start with why people were marching in D.C. yesterday. Let's start on that issue. Because it's many things. The media and the focus is on those who believe that this was a stolen election, and that is certainly a big part, perhaps a majority, of all of the concern and anger out there on the streets. But what else was motivating this? Why do people feel the need to take time out of their lives in a very difficult year with a lot of stresses around us because of COVID and everything else? Why would hundreds of thousands of people gather together in D.C. to make their voices heard? We have been drifting as a nation toward a culture politically, socially, where there is no middle ground allowed, there's no dissent allowed. The rights of political minorities are increasingly trampled on, and there is an incredibly powerful system, one that even goes beyond what you've seen in some of the other authoritarian regimes of history, in that it is entirely capable of leveraging information technology, the global marketplace, wealth on a scale that human beings have never seen, to brainwash, to control, to determine. And it feels like a rigged game. Right? It feels as though what we do does not really change very much. And it feels as though we're not allowed to even raise that up anymore and talk about it publicly for fear of being ostracized by these social media companies that I know that we have to get used to this idea. Social media is not something that kids use now just to say hi to each other and communicate. Social media is a dominant force in the flow of information in this country and around the world. It is more powerful than the traditional media because it determines what traditional media you get to see. Wokeness. This is another way of describing political orthodoxy of the left. And wokeness is ever evolving because ultimately its true goal is not changing society so that everybody is equal. Its true goal is just power, and then it will figure out what it decides to do with it. Because it doesn't even know what it wants. Why does it feel like there is an inherent schizophrenia in the Democrat left's woke ideology? Because there is. There are multiple personalities at war with each other inside of the Democrat mind on this issue. because you can never be sure that you're woke enough. It has to constantly evolve and seek out new targets. It's effectively a colonial project for the mind, right? It is dominating your consciousness. That's what it seeks to do, and then it can entirely control you, and then figure out how to create an entirely equal society. And what would that even look like? As we know, societies that put the greatest emphasis on achieving absolute equality achieve the exact opposite. And history speaks very clearly on that. So people are upset because of all of these things. And then also, we have suffered through the single worst year in terms of our individual freedoms, in terms of government overreach of my lifetime. But they use this idea that the government can protect you from COVID to justify all of it. They use the notion that if you only listen, you'll be saving lives, you'll be protecting people. And if you're not willing to listen, if you want to dissent, you are putting people at risk. This was a recipe for absolute control. And they've edged closer and closer to that this year than I thought would be possible, honestly, in my lifetime. And for what? Are we safer from COVID? Think of all the government mandates and shutdowns and everything they've done. Does anyone look at what's happening right now in the country with hospitalizations and cases and think anything other than the virus is going to virus? It spreads. You do your best to stay healthy and stay away from it, but the government cannot protect you. Am I missing something? All right, where's the example of great government success in this? You had Operation Warp Speed, which is a success, but the distribution of this vaccine is already a cluster. And then you look at all the lockdowns, the masking, all these policies they've instituted, and for what? Does it feel like the journalists who are supposed to be speaking truth to power, these media companies that have gotten, in many cases, especially the social media companies, wealthier, more influential during lockdown? Because we are now replacing human contact and living life with screens. We all live our life now. If you're working remotely, unless you're an essential and you have to actually go and do your job, we're living our life just in front of these screens, where you're being bombarded with information that's destructive often, that's false, that's vicious, and that has an agenda, and that's really almost all the time. And we're replacing those basic bonds of human contact that remind us all that we are in this together and we are all on borrowed time. And when we're talking about Americans, our fellow Americans, we're losing sight of the fact that we live in the greatest country in the history of the planet. That's an amazing statement, isn't it? And I'm sorry if it sounds a little hokey today. I'm sorry if it's a little bit corny to some of you, but we right now are living in the greatest country, in the greatest, wealthiest, happiest time in human history. And we are lucky to be here. And we need to preserve it. Yes, we need to fight for it. We need to understand what's so great about it. But what I see out there right now is this ideological cancer of destroy the dissenters, destroy those who believe in liberty, in limitations on government, destroy those who think the Constitution is supposed to prevent all the great plans that the experts are conjuring up for us. Isn't this year of the lockdown, isn't 2020, I know we're in 2021 now, but I'm thinking about the last 12 months, isn't it a repudiation of the elites and of government control? It doesn't feel like they think that, that's for sure. We're very aware of that. But anybody who's being honest about it would say, we need a return to first principles here in this country. We need an understanding of what it is that we are seeking to create in our society every day. And for us to get there, we need to have a combination of things all come together at once. We need a relentless, unapologetic search for the truth. We need the courage and bravery to stand for our principles. And we have to remember that at the end of the day, what we're all trying to do, all of us who are approaching this in good faith, with love and reverence for the history of this country, for this amazing nation, is to make this a better place for all of us even the wackos, even the people of Antifa. I want a better America that they are fortunate to live in because our ideas prevail. And I know that can be a hard thing. You want to think about destroying your enemy sometimes. You want to think about defeating the other side. And we want to win at the ballot box. We want to win on the battlefield of ideas. But isn't it this beautiful thing about this country that victory achieved the right way means that it's a better country for all of us, even the leftists, even the losers, even the crazy. It's a better America that's more secure, more rule of law, more prosperity, more individual liberty. That's why I show up every day. That's why we do this thing that we're doing here on this show. So I think a return to those first principles for all of us at this moment, when I know so many feel dejected, feel like they have been cast aside, and feel like we had a momentum. We had a moment, and it lasted for 3 years. The COVID year was something else. The COVID year threw the whole project of making America great again into this different cycle where we were just all locked down and trying to stay alive, trying to do what we can to help our neighbors and prevent the government from shutting down more businesses and more churches than they already were. There's a lot of anger out there, and that's not going to go away. But we have to explore together honestly what is working for us, what can we do, and what does the future look like. The reasons for the march yesterday in D.C. were patriotic and decent, and I support them, and I'm with them. And we have to also know that we maintain principles even in the face of the most vicious, underhanded, cheating, maniacal opposition. We cannot become that which we seek to defeat. And I don't think we're even close to it. And we're going to talk about the double standards and all this. We're going to discuss all that today on the show. But let's all just take this moment to remember why it is that we do what we do and what makes us who we are as patriots, conservatives, Americans. What is it that is so special about all, or else why not just go live in New Zealand? Why not just move to some other place, right? No, we understand that there's something special about this, and we continue to fight for it, and we'll do everything we can to preserve it. Win or lose, my friends. That is our mentality. We are warriors for the cause of our ideological battles, knowing that there is no guaranteed result, but that the fight is worth having anyway. Hey, Team Buck, thank you so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you like this video, please click that little thumbs up button so then it will log as liked. And also, if you want to see more great content from The First, please click subscribe.